Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you believed your entire future depended on them, only to realize too late that everything you thought was secure could be taken away in an instant? Grace sat on the edge of her apartment balcony, the city lights stretching below her like a million restless eyes, each one judging her, each one waiting for her to falter. Her hand instinctively rested on her stomach, where a secret fragile, terrifying, and yet full of promise had begun to grow. She had counted days in disbelief, whispered to herself in hope, and yet the truth of it pressed down heavier than any weight she had ever carried. Ethan. His name was on her lips like a prayer and a curse all at once. She remembered the first time he had smiled at her across the crowded university cafeteria, the way his eyes held a warmth that promised safety and excitement at the same time. Back then, the world had seemed simple. Love was simple, and life was simple. But now, life had grown complicated in ways she had never anticipated. The phone buzzed insistently on the table beside her, a reminder that reality never waits for emotions to catch up. She picked it up, hand shaking slightly. The message wasn't from Ethan. It was from her coworker, Rachel, a woman whose bright smile masked a habit for gossip. "I heard. Are you really pregnant? Everyone's talking. Are you sure?" Grace swallowed hard, closing her eyes. She wasn't sure how to respond. Some part of her wanted to shout, to deny, to run back to the safety of her childhood village, where elders' eyes and the rhythm of ancestral drums gave her courage. Another part trembled because this moment could change everything. A flashback hit her like a wave. She was 10 years old, running barefoot in the red earth of her village, laughing with Oliver, her childhood friend, under the same mango tree where her mother had told her a girl's choices are her shield. Guard them well, or the world will not. She had thought she understood that lesson then, but the city had tested her understanding in ways no child could predict. The wind carried the faint sound of traffic horns, car doors slamming, and the far-off wail of a siren. Urban life had a way of amplifying fear, turning whispers into roars and loneliness into a tangible ache. Grace hugged herself, feeling the life inside her, the responsibility, the sudden weight of it. Ethan had promised so many things: love, protection, a future together, but promises in this city, she realized, were often like shadows. They disappear the moment light hits them directly. Her phone buzzed again, this time a message from Ethan himself. "We need to talk. Urgent." Her pulse quickened. Every instinct screamed at her. Trust him, confront him, or run. Each option carried consequences she wasn't yet ready to face. She looked down at her stomach again, closed her eyes, and whispered, "Whatever happens, this child will change everything." And she knew deep inside that the events about to unfold would test not only her heart, but her courage, her judgment, and the very meaning of loyalty and love in a world that had no patience for innocence. The following morning, the sunlight poured through the blinds, sharp and unrelenting, illuminating every corner of Grace's small apartment. There was no hiding now. The world demanded action, answers, and courage she didn't yet feel. Her phone buzzed again. Ethan's name flashed on the screen, but she hesitated. Every instinct told her to brace herself. When she finally answered, his voice sounded strange, distant, almost rehearsed. "Grace, we need to talk. Alone. Alone." The word echoed ominously in her mind. In the background, the city roared a constant reminder that privacy in urban life was a fragile illusion. She stepped onto the balcony, letting the wind tug at her hair, and inhaled deeply. Flashbacks came unbidden. Last week, the clinic nurse had handed her the small, crumpled slip of paper confirming her pregnancy. The moment she saw the 2 lines, the world shifted. Life as she knew it no longer existed. She had called Ethan immediately, and for a fleeting moment, she believed in the warmth of his reassurance. But now, there was a distance in his words, a shadow in his eyes that whispered betrayal. By mid-morning, whispers had begun to circulate at work. Colleagues gave her sideways glances, some masking concern, others curiosity, and a few thinly veiled judgment. Every look was a reminder that the city was watching, waiting for her to falter. She clenched her hands, remembering the words her mother had once said, A child carries not just life, but the weight of truth. And sometimes, the weight is heavier than the heart can bear. The doorbell rang, startling her. It was Rachel, her coworker, always bright, always intrusive. Grace. Everyone's talking, Rachel said softly, lowering her voice. Are you really pregnant? Are you sure Ethan knows? Grace felt her chest tighten. The room seemed smaller, the walls closer. She nodded slowly, but didn't answer. She couldn't. Each word felt like a confession to the universe. Each word would solidify the invisible judgment that was already forming around her. By afternoon, she decided to confront Ethan. She found him at the apartment they had shared for weekends. Leaning against the balcony railing, gazing out at the city skyline, as if the towering buildings could hide his guilt. Asterisk Grace, he began, voice tense, avoiding her eyes. I don't know if I'm ready for this. This isn't the right time. Things are complicated. Her heart thundered in her chest. She had expected fear, maybe hesitation, but not this cold evasion. Complicated, she asked, voice shaking but sharp. You mean you don't want this? You mean you're not going to take responsibility? His silence was deafening. Grace's vision blurred not from tears, but from the suffocating sense of betrayal. She felt the ancestral weight of her mother's warnings. The echoes of her childhood village whispering that loyalty and honesty were not just virtues, but survival tools. In that moment, Grace realized the city was harsher than any village lesson could prepare her for. And yet, deep inside, a small ember of resolve sparked. She would not crumble. She would not allow the whispers, the betrayal, or the fear to define her. The pregnancy had changed everything, but what it revealed about the people around her was just as important. She had to decide: fight, flee, or trust her instincts, and trust in herself. And somewhere, in the back of her mind, the faint memory of Oliver, her childhood friend, who had always stood quietly by her side, surfaced. A fleeting thought, almost a whisper. Perhaps loyalty existed somewhere still. By midweek, the city had become a labyrinth of whispers and sidelong glances. Grace felt their weight every time she stepped outside. The pregnancy was no longer just hers. It was a public spectacle, a private life laid bare in the unforgiving glare of urban scrutiny. At work, emails were pointed, meetings dragged on unnecessarily. And her colleagues, some allies, some silent critics, watched for cracks in her composure. Grace sat in her office, gripping the edges of her desk, replaying Ethan's words in her mind. I don't know if I'm ready for this. Things are complicated. Complicated? He had promised love, commitment, protection. Now, he spoke as though responsibility were a foreign burden. The memory of her mother's voice echoed louder than ever. A girl's strength is revealed when the world seeks to weaken her. The city is not kind, but your heart can be firmer than steel. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting golden streaks across the office floor, Grace received a message from Rachel. I just saw Ethan. He's with someone else. I thought you should know. Her stomach lurched. Betrayal was no longer a suspicion. It was a living, breathing reality. The city seemed to twist around her. Traffic lights flared like warning signs. Neon reflections shimmered in puddles from a sudden drizzle, and even the distant hum of the metro sounded accusatory. Every noise, every shadow, seemed to underline the magnitude of her solitude. That evening, she confronted Ethan at the small cafe where they had shared their first meal as a couple. He sat slouched, hands on the table, a mask of guilt barely hidden behind practiced charm. Ethan, I heard about her. Is it true? Her voice was calm, controlled, but every syllable carried the weight of betrayal. He avoided her gaze, eyes darting to the floor. Grace, it's not what you think. But his hesitation was confirmation enough. Grace felt a fire ignite inside her, the heat of years of village teachings, moral clarity, and ancestral lessons fusing with the raw pain of betrayal. She realized something crucial: her life, her pregnancy. Her dignity, none of it depended on him anymore. On the walk home, memories of Oliver crept unbidden. He had been a quiet shadow throughout her life, always present and small. unnoticed ways running errands for her family in the village, offering protection without expectation, advising with wisdom beyond his years. Unlike Ethan, whose words had crumbled under pressure, Oliver had always been steadfast. Back at her apartment, Grace stared at the skyline, the city lights reflecting her turmoil. For a moment, she felt powerless, but she refused to break. The pregnancy had changed everything, yes, but it was also revealing the truth about those around her. Some would falter, some would rise to meet her strength. A sudden ping from her laptop interrupted the quiet, an anonymous message. It read simply, "Not all loyalty is loud. Some waits patiently, always watching. Don't forget who stood by you when the world turned its back." Goosebumps rose on her arms. She knew instinctively the message's meaning. Oliver, her childhood friend, her silent protector, he had been there all along. And for the first time in weeks, she felt the faint stirrings of hope. The city hadn't crushed her yet. It had tested her, and she was ready to respond. The following morning, Grace awoke to a city that felt both larger and smaller than ever. Larger because every glance, every whisper seemed magnified, turning the streets, the cafes, and the office corridors into a court of judgment. Smaller because she realized that her world now had only a few people she could truly trust, and that she could rely on herself above all. She dressed quickly, choosing an outfit that balanced confidence and subtlety. There would be no hiding today. The pregnancy had made everything public. She refused to let shame or gossip dictate her dignity. She carried herself with quiet determination, her every step resonating with the lessons of her mother and the ancestral wisdom she had once dismissed as stories. At the office, murmurs rose as she entered. She ignored them, making her way to her desk, opening her laptop, and reviewing the emails about her recent projects. She realized that work, like life, demanded clarity, focus, and resilience. And she would give it exactly that, nothing less. Mid-morning, Ethan appeared at the office building entrance. His expression was a mixture of fear and defiance, as though he expected her to collapse, to beg, or to accept the world he had created around her. Grace didn't move toward him. She simply watched, arms crossed as he fidgeted and tried to find words that wouldn't come. "Grace," he began, voice shaky. "I didn't mean—" She held up a hand. "Don't. Not a word. I've already heard enough." His eyes widened, and for the first time, she saw fear in him, a fear he had never imagined he would feel. Grace realized that confrontation alone wasn't enough. She needed to reclaim her narrative publicly, firmly, and with moral authority. By noon, the whispers had reached their peak. Someone from the office had leaked the story to social media. Photos of Grace, smiling at work, juxtaposed with rumors, painted a stark picture of urban scrutiny. But Grace refused to bend. She typed a post calm, assertive, honest, acknowledging her pregnancy, stating she was proud of her choices and declaring that she would not let judgment define her or her child. As she pressed send, her phone buzzed with a message from Oliver. "I'm here. Always. If you need guidance, you know where to find me." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of decades of loyalty and quiet protection. Her heart swelled with a mixture of gratitude and hope, but she didn't allow sentiment to cloud her resolve. The afternoon brought a confrontation with Ethan's family, who tried to persuade her to terminate the pregnancy quietly, to maintain appearances. Grace listened, calm but unyielding. She remembered her mother's words from her childhood. "Your body is your choice. Your life is your story, and no one can write it but you." By sunset, Grace walked along the city streets, head held high, stomach swelling with life that had changed everything. She felt the pulse of the city beneath her feet, the hum of humanity all around. This pregnancy wasn't just a burden, it was a catalyst, a challenge, and a test. She had faced betrayal, scrutiny, and fear, and she had emerged unbroken. Somewhere deep inside, she knew the story was far from over. Ethan's betrayal had been revealed, social judgment had tested her, and yet, there remained a force she could always trust. Oliver, her childhood friend, the quiet guardian of her heart, still waited in the wings. The threads of her past, present, and future were beginning to weave a new tapestry, one she intended to control. The city, with its harsh lights and louder voices, had become her proving ground, and Grace was ready to prove not just her strength, but the power of truth, courage, and unwavering self-respect. The weekend arrived with a heavy, humid silence that seemed to mirror the tension building inside Grace. The city was alive around her, but she felt disconnected, as if she were moving through a dream where every step carried weight. The truth, she knew, was about to demand its final reckoning. Oliver's message had arrived hours earlier. "Meet me where we used to play under the old mango tree. It's time you saw what I've carried for you." The words resonated with a certainty Grace hadn't felt in weeks. She had been so focused on betrayal, gossip, and fear that she had almost forgotten the steady, unwavering presence that had always existed in her life. At the park, she found him waiting under the sprawling mango tree from her childhood. Its branches stretched like arms offering protection, and in its shade, memories of innocence, laughter, and promises long forgotten came rushing back. Oliver's eyes met hers with a calm intensity. "Grace," he said softly, "I've known about Ethan's plans for weeks. I've seen him lie, avoid, and manipulate, but I couldn't interfere until you were ready to see the truth." She felt a mixture of relief and astonishment. You knew?" Her voice trembled, but this time with hope, not fear. He nodded. "Yes. Ethan never intended to take responsibility. I've been protecting you from afar, making sure no harm comes to you or the child. He is not the man you believed him to be. I tried to warn you in subtle ways through messages, through my actions, but I wanted you to realize your strength first." Grace's mind raced. Images of Ethan smiling, whispering promises, and then avoiding responsibility flashed before her. The betrayal was deeper than she had imagined. Ethan had manipulated emotions, public perception, and even her trust in herself. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked, voice cracking. "Because you needed to discover your own power," Oliver replied gently. "Sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones we must face alone. But now you see clearly, and you are stronger than any betrayal." Grace looked down at her stomach, the life within her representing both vulnerability and unbreakable strength. The city had tried to define her, gossip had tried to shame her, and Ethan had tried to manipulate her. But here, under the old mango tree, she felt clarity and resolve. Later that evening, Ethan called again, panic seeping into his voice. "Grace, I can explain. Please." She simply looked at the phone and then turned it off. The man who had once seemed everything was now irrelevant. His betrayal had been revealed, his intentions exposed, and his influence over her life evaporated like mist in the morning sun. Grace's thoughts drifted to Oliver. For the first time in weeks, she felt trust, loyalty, and love, all in one simple, human truth. He had been there, unwavering, while the world turned against her. The pregnancy had indeed changed everything. It had revealed who was false and who was steadfast, who deserved her heart and who never had. As she walked back through the city streets that evening, head held high, she realized that life had tested her courage, resilience, and moral compass. But through it all, she had emerged not just unbroken, but empowered, armed with clarity about her values, her strength, and the people truly worthy of her trust. The night air was warm, filled with distant traffic sounds and the low hum of the city. Grace inhaled deeply, feeling the rhythm of life, the pulse of truth, and the quiet promise of new beginnings. She had survived betrayal, societal scrutiny, and fear itself. And now, she was ready to embrace what was hers to claim. The morning sun spilled golden light across the city skyline, but Grace no longer felt the weight of fear pressing down on her chest. The events of the past weeks had left scars, yes, but they had also revealed a truth she would never forget: strength. Integrity and loyalty are the foundations of a life worth living. Oliver met her at the apartment, carrying a small bundle wrapped in a soft cloth. Inside, it wasn't a child yet, but a symbolic gift, a reminder of the enduring loyalty and care he had always shown. It was a handcrafted bracelet, woven with intricate patterns from their village, a token of guidance and protection. Grace smiled, feeling tears prick her eyes. It wasn't just a bracelet, it was the embodiment of a promise that had stood the test of time, a reminder that some bonds, unlike fleeting romances, never break. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything. For being here, even when I couldn't see you." "Always," Oliver replied. "You have the courage, Grace, the child, your life, they are yours to protect and guide. But know this, you're not alone anymore." Days later, Grace confronted Ethan one final time. She stood in the middle of the office lounge, where gossip had once followed her every step, and spoke with a calm authority that silenced even the most judgmental onlookers. "Ethan, your choices are yours. Mine are mine. And I will not allow anyone to define my life for me. This child, my future, and my dignity are mine. Goodbye." Ethan's face fell, and for the first time he felt powerless. The man who had once seemed all-knowing, all-powerful in Grace's life has been stripped of influence by a woman who refused to be broken. As weeks turned into months, Grace prepared for the child, embracing both the joy and the responsibility that came with it. Oliver stood by her side, not as a shadow, but as a partner in life, a symbol of enduring loyalty and steadfast love. Together, they transformed their apartment into a warm, nurturing space, blending modern city life with touches of ancestral tradition-woven fabrics, handcrafted carvings, and soft music that echoed the rhythms of their roots. The pregnancy had indeed changed everything, but not in the way anyone had expected. It had uncovered truth, revealed loyalty, and forced Grace to confront fear, betrayal, and societal judgment head-on. It had shown her that the people who truly mattered would rise, and the false would fall away. On a quiet evening, as the city lights shimmered like scattered stars, Grace held her stomach and whispered, "We've survived. We'll thrive. And nothing will take this from us." Her mother, Margaret, stood nearby, watching with pride. "You see, child," she said softly, "life tests every heart. But those who listen to truth, who honor loyalty, and who embrace courage, they find their way." Grace smiled, feeling a peace she hadn't known in weeks. The city was still noisy, chaotic, and unforgiving, but she had discovered her power. The pregnancy had changed everything. It had forced revelations, ignited courage, and ultimately, it had given her the clarity to choose the life and love she deserved. And in that choice lay the greatest victory of all, the reclaiming of her story, her heart, and her destiny.